Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 5th appointment of the Art for the Environment Conversations. My name is Camilla Palestra. I'm the Associate Curator at the Center for Sustainable Fashion, where I've been working together with Professor Lucy Orta on the development of the Art for the Environment International Artist Residency Programme. The program was launched in 2015 as a way to offer UAL students and alumni the incredible opportunity to apply to fully funded residencies in one of our international hosting partners, as a way to offer some physical space in an incredible environment, as well as mental space to reflect on issues that define the 21st century, from biodiversity to climate justice, sustainability, social economy, and human rights. In this moment, the physical residencies are on pause because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity to regroup and invite some of our partners and former residents to share their experiences and to learn more about their creative role in envisioning a world of tomorrow. I'm very happy to have today Guy Robertson, Ranura Edirisinghe, and Cecilia Ceccherini. Guy is a curator and writer based between London and Spoleto in Italy, where he is co-director of the Mahler and LeWitt Studios, a program of artist residencies and special projects. With the Mahler and LeWitt Studios, his aim is to provide a platform for artists of all disciplines, as well as writers and curators, to develop new work. Guy's recent curatorial projects include General Philosophy, Luca Savic, SKUC Ljubljana 2020, Ex Voto, Julie Born-Schwartz, Macintosh Lane, London, Alison Katz, Traforati, Torre Bonomo in Spoleto, Hodgkin and Creed, Inside Out, Kistefos, Norway, all to 2019. He's co-editor of the forthcoming Howard Hodgkin catalog Raisonné and has worked with the Artist Studio and Estate since 2012. Ranura Edirisinghe is a textile and knitwear designer. Born in Sri Lanka and brought up in the UK, his work looks towards heritage, craft and process, often working with artisans in Sri Lanka. He completed a BA Fashion Knitwear at Central St. Martin's, a UAL, supported by the Samsung Fashion Design Fund Award. And he's currently completed the MA Fashion at Central St. Martin's as the LVMH Grand Prix Scholar. And finally, Cecilia Ceccherini's practice intersects design with conceptual art. She's interested in revealing the relations that humans entertain with other living beings through art, practice, and design. After studying decoration at the Albertina Academy of Fine Arts in Torino, Italy, in 2019 she completed the MA in Textile Design at the Chelsea College of Arts at UAL, where she specialized in weaving. Here she started working with textile and tapestries that, as everyday objects, also have sculptural and pictorial qualities, effectively combine her aesthetic and scientific approaches. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before handing over to the speakers. Please keep your mic and camera off for a better streaming. There will be time at the end, after the presentations, for a Q&A. You're welcome to use the chat box at the bottom right of your screen to put your questions, or also to raise your hand and ask your questions in person if you prefer. We should be finishing by 2 o'clock. And the conversation is being recorded and will be made available online. And finally, as always, also a big thank you to Abigail Fletcher from the postgraduate community team at UAL, who worked with me on this series of conversations.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, Abigail, and thank you to Lucy for initiating this excellent program. It's a partnership that we're very proud to be involved with. The first resident AER Mahler and LeWitt Studios resident was Ranura Edirisinghe in 2019, sorry, and then Cecilia Ceccherini last year. We look forward to their presentations shortly. I will give a brief introduction to our program in Spoleto at the Mahler and LeWitt Studios, and then briefly mention a few projects which I think may be of interest outside of the AER partnership to the UAL postgraduate community. So this slide that we're looking at here offers a few photographs from the programme. At bottom left, you have a picture of Spoleto. So the Mahler and LeWitt Studios is based in Spoleto in Umbria. It's a hilltop town, about 30,000 people. And I think something that's really interesting in the context of the AER programme is this very kind of unique and direct link between town and countryside, or the town that it offers. And we'll go a bit more into that in another slide. It's on the left-hand side, you see the Duomo, which has frescoes by Filippo Lippi and Pinturicchio, amongst others. The fortress at the top of the town is a 16th century Lucrezia Borgia stayed there once, supposedly, but it's been inhabited since pre-Roman times by the Umbri. This region of central Italy was sort of presided over by Umbri and Etruscans simultaneously, sometimes together, sometimes warring. And behind the fortress, you see a hillside, and the hill is known. It's called Monte Luco. And at the top of this hill is a forest, a sacred forest, which I think is interesting, as we'll see in some future slides, regarding the partnership with UAL and the AER programme. It's inside the forest is a stone, which is thought to be by many the first known written environmental law. The sacred forest was sacred to Jupiter, and in pagan times, and on the stone is written essentially a law which says no littering. It says if you bring anything into this forest, you must take it away, and if you don't, you'll be fined this many oxen. And there's a monastery. There in the Middle Ages, there were over a dozen monasteries on Monte Luco, and one of them was founded by not founded, I apologize, but St. Francis of Assisi stayed in one of these monasteries, which you can still visit today. And St. Francis, who of course is the patron saint of the environment, was born in Umbria. If you look to the left-hand side of that picture of Spoleto in the bottom left of your screen, the valley kind of disappears up to the left. Assisi is a sort of half an hour drive in that direction. Also on this page, you'll see at the top and the top left, if I get my pointer out, this is the LeWitt studio, which is used by residents, and there's two other rooms further through that door there. This is Cecilia here in the bottom right of your screen, working in one of those end rooms at the LeWitt studio on her residency. Ranura Edirisinghe here up on the top right photograph, in a sort of work sharing session at the beginning of his month in residency with his colleagues on the residency, Brian O'Keffer on the left, Eliki Panagiotopoulos in front of him, and Tommaso Ferracci to his right, who's our assistant curator. So we run a 4-month programme approximately through the year, which incorporates 3 residency sessions, spring, summer and autumn. And then we also, outside of this, do some workshops and symposia. We run various open calls, which I'll come on to shortly, but we're also open to submissions, and you can find out more about the programme at our website, mahler-lewitt.org. So moving swiftly on, so we use the Mahler and LeWitt Studios is set around a series of buildings in the old town of Spoleto, and mainly set around the former studios of Anna Mahler and Sol LeWitt, which coincidentally are next door to each other. The two artists never met, we don't think. So Anna Mahler was the daughter of Gustav and Alma Mahler. She was a stone sculptor, and you can see her at work on the largest sculpture she ever made here, the Tower of Masks, which is in a sculpture garden in Los Angeles. On the right-hand side, you can see her at work in the studio in Spoleto. And she first came to Spoleto in 1968, looking for a place to, she had a studio in London at the time, and she was really looking for somewhere to, as Camilla mentioned, the kind of quality of the residencies that we offer through this program is some time and space, really, to kind of take stock and to consider oneself and one's practice in relationship to surroundings and the environment in a slower rhythm, perhaps. I think nature, considerations of nature were really significant to Anna's practice, and I want to just briefly offer a quote from a lecture she delivered in 1962 at the University of Chicago, titled "The Human Figure in Art." She says, "Where one could find a truly elemental creative force in our times is hard to say. Certainly the creative force is still alive, but it can express itself only with great difficulty. What catches the attention now is a kind of self-advertising, public relations originality, which is not genuinely original. I have tried to stress the importance of stylization and abstraction in art, in all art. Art is indeed unthinkable without abstraction. Even the act of seeing is impossible without obligatorily abstracting from the full volume of perceived reality. But it is just as true to say that there can be no art without nature. And here I speak of nature in a vernacular sense, of what exists outside of our own body and mind, in contrast to what happens inside us. The relationship between and constant mutual stimulation of object and subject, thing and self, is a vital thing. Where this circuit does not work, abstraction becomes a mental plaything, formalism, or geometry, pretending to be art. And I think that this, for 1962, her comments are really prescient and relevant to today still, and I think feed into conversations I've had with Cecilia and Ranura about their work and about this need, thinking ecologically and with an awareness of our environment today, to consider our impact and think cyclically about art and nature and our reliance on nature and impact on it. The next slide, this is a sculpture by Anna Mahler. I'd encourage you to visit the Anna Mahler Association webpage, given at the bottom right of the slide here, where there's a wonderful 20-minute video you can watch of Anna sculpting this particular sculpture from beginning to end over the course of 6 months. So moving on to Sol LeWitt. This is Sol LeWitt at the top of Monte Luco, the hillside I pointed out in the first slide, actually from the sacred forest, observing the view. So Sol LeWitt was an American conceptual artist, really kind of pioneering and seminal in conceptual arts and minimalism. He had an Italian gallerist in Bari called Marilena Bonomo, who had a holiday house on Monte Luco, and he, after doing exhibitions in Bari, would start visiting, was invited to Spoleto, fell in love with the place, kept visiting, eventually bought a dilapidated farmhouse on Monte Luco, did it up, and then in and around 1980 moved to Spoleto full time and lived there throughout the 80s, made work from a studio in the town, which he took when his young children were born, and used it as a base to work around Europe, but also was very kind of much informed by what he was seeing around him. This is a wall drawing of Sol LeWitt. So he often made work by instructional means, and on the left hand side here you see a diagram which is the basis for drafters to carry out the work of this wall drawing. His work in this period is very much informed by Quattrocento art, and I'd like to read a short quote from an interview from 2003 in Bomb magazine with Saul Lestrau. So this is Saul LeWitt. When artists make art, they shouldn't question whether it is permissible to do one thing or another. In my case, I reached a point in the evolution of my work at which the ideology and ideas became inhibiting. I felt that I had become a prisoner of my own pronouncements or ideas. I found I was compelled by the innate logic of the work to follow a different way. Whether it was a step forward or a step back or a step sideways didn't matter. At this point, I had moved to Italy. Quattrocento art really impressed me. I began to think about how art isn't an avant-garde game. It has to be something more universal, more important. And there's elements of that comment that kind of ring true with Anna Mahler's quote earlier. So he was visiting he would have visited many Quattrocento frescoes in Umbria around this time, and you can really see how his paintings of this period are informed by these experiences. The color palette, for example, the wall drawings we just saw have this kind of soft pastel colors, which you can recognize in the frescoes here. So this series of frescoes we're looking at here are by Giotto and workshop significantly, and probably other hands. It's very kind of lost in the shrouds of time exactly who did what, when, where, but that's a really fascinating aspect of them. And it depicts the life of St. Francis. So looping back to what I was mentioning at the beginning, and in the top right here you have a fresco of St. Francis preaching to the birds. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to skip forward. This is actually a photograph by Cecilia Ceccherini, and so the other side, the photograph we saw in the first slide of Spoleto, the other side of the fortress, connecting. There's a valley before you get to the hillside, and connecting the two is this vast medieval, built on Roman foundations, aqueduct. And I just think it really sort of encapsulates this kind of cyclical reliance and dependence on nature. You know, this aqueduct exists to draw the water from two different sources beyond Monte Luco up into the Valnerina Mountains to the city of Spoleto for the people living there. So there's that dependence and reliance on those sources, and this manipulation of nature on the other hand is huge, represented by this huge structure, which is brought together so beautifully in this image by Cecilia. So just to very briefly mention three projects that I think the UAL Post-Grad Community might be interested in. We currently have an annual open call essay prize collaboration with Fitzcarraldo Editions, which is currently open for submissions until the 15th of March. I just wanted to point out a previous winner of the prize was Joanna Pocock, and she came on residencies with us and to write part of Surrender, which is, to paraphrase from the back of the book, looks at radical environmental movements, scavenger communities, transsexual rewilders. Joanna attends an eco-sex convergence and offers a provocative and profound examination of life in an era of increasing climatic disruption. I really recommend the book. And then she also contributed to a So Anyway magazine special edition, Lost in Spoleto, edited by Gertrude Gibbons, and you can access that online. Very quickly, there's a project we're doing with Lena Hermsdorf this summer in the festival. She's developed this work over a series of 3 years and multiple residencies, which really recommend. I'm running over, I think, and just very lastly, this is an open call we have going at the moment, which is a collaboration with Mahler Foundation, and it's called Mahler, the Song of the Earth, and it's an open call inviting responses to Gustav Mahler's symphonic work, The Song of the Earth. So to just offer a quick quote from that, cool, and then I'm done. Mahler believed nature held the key to the profundity of life. In his late masterpiece, The Song of the Earth, 1908, the composer contemplates the many facets of life, its beauty and hardship, and maps out an inner journey from a fear of death to a deep acceptance of our mortality, recognizing in its valedictory closing movement that to live is to participate in the never-ending unfolding of existence, that in being we too are a part of eternity. As he once summed up, one will be able to give me the title Singer of Nature. The project Mahler, The Song of the Earth, draws on the composer's intense awareness of the preciousness of our planet to raise awareness and encourage action. Applications are invited from artists of all disciplines, nationality and age. A response to The Song of the Earth is defined as a borrowing of text, a musical quotation, or more loosely, as a reference to an alliance with the composer's perspective on nature and humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you for this journey, and I'm sure there will be more time at the end with a Q&A for some questions to go back to the program, etc. But now I will move directly to Ranura. Over to you.
Thank you, Camilla. Obviously, I was in Spoleto last 2018, and Spoleto took at the textile manufacturing of the region. Perugia has a very rich history of kind of knitwear manufacturing, so we kind of really wanted to look at a lot of the kind of small scale workshops, but also these kind of quite much bigger kind of knitwear factories producing for luxury fashion brands. And this is in Perugia. This is kind of like a small weaving workshop run by Martha and her apprentice. And kind of what really struck me was this kind of, and we're always really interested in like the reading or the context of, like a weaver or like a craftsperson in the UK and maybe in Italy as well. And then comparing that to in Sri Lanka, where it might be a very different kind of profession, kind of essentially doing the same thing, but these two things having a very opposing kind of cultural context maybe. So kind of, this is Martha's weaving workshop, and kind of she kind of really looks at producing these kind of quite traditional medieval Peruvian designs. She's kind of using these like 19th century card frames, and kind of just learning about how kind of in Italy, especially how kind of the support she has to kind of keep going producing work. So again, we see this a much larger kind of weaving specialist party. Again, this it was a family-run business. This I think third generation of the Party family, kind of who now owns it. And again, kind of seeing these kind of very kind of large-scale workshops producing for this kind of very kind of might of the Italian fashion industry was kind of really important for me. But kind of my aim in Spoleto was really just to kind of utilize the kind of textile network there, kind of maybe looking at any kind of waste these factories produced, or kind of any dead stock they would have to kind of recreate kind of textile work or kind of arrangements. So yeah, this is just in the studio. I was in Spoleto, kind of again, this kind of things I'd collected, very much markets, going to these kind of just kind of collecting bits of textile, bits of material. So yeah, again, this is kind of me in the studio. There is doing lots of knitting and crochet, utilizing kind of old linens that I could find, bed sheets, curtains, whatever. Really, we went to this amazing, almost like a vintage kind of secondhand shop as well with Guy, and we found all this like just amazing bits that people had like donated there, all kind of being sold. Just kind of repurposing these textiles into different kind of giving them different treatments, whether that's through heat bonding or crochet. And then like the kind of, we had like in the open studio, it was very much presenting these kind of little experiments through photography, which I thought was really important for the work. I was really interested in kind of not showing the actual crochet or knitted samples, but kind of very much celebrating them kind of in this very kind of static kind of, this through a photograph. I thought was really nice. So kind of playing with scale. So on slide 8, kind of really showing through a photograph, kind of really creating this sense of ambiguity. So you can hold or touch this very tactile thing, and I thought that was really important, removing this kind of distance of how something is made. and like looking at kind of this idea of craft and art in fashion, I thought that's kind of what I wanted to do. So that was just a very quick overview of my time in Spoleto. If you move to slide 9, this is, I shouldn't really be talking about this, but this launches on Friday, but this is kind of my graduating class on the MA have done a collaboration with the Italian fashion brand Tod's. And my project is really this kind of love letter to Spoleto, utilizing my entire experience there to kind of create, so we created like garments and kind of accessories for Tod's. And that launches on Friday, so you could maybe have a look at that if you wanted to. Slide 11. I focused the project on looking at David Smith, who spent some time in Spoleto and kind of was really inspired by his work and the work he created, and then utilized that onto different kind of accessories and kind of garments for Tod's. So yeah, have a look at that when it launches if you'd like to. And then moving on to slide 12, I kind of immediately, almost after the residency, started this idea of like a boutique workshop, again, utilizing and working with craftspeople in Sri Lanka. So again, this is a much wider part of my master's work at the moment. For that, so yeah, so boutique printing is this idea of, it's a wax resistant printing process using hot wax onto natural fabrics such as cotton and kind of drawing through wax. So boutique printing is really kind of special to Sri Lanka and kind of lots of parts of South Asia really. And for me, it was really about using this technique in a way that I could try and kind of elevate it or remove it into something that's a bit more contemporary. So I initially hoped to kind of go over there and work with these artisans for my master's work, but obviously that wasn't possible. So it was about this way of collaborating with them through something digital. But you know, some of these artisans who live in kind of areas not having access to email or anything, so it's really interesting. We kind of I can show you as the slides come back maybe, but kind of, you know, trying to like design or communicate through WhatsApp, but like WhatsApp pictures, and then just like designing things over the phone and things like that. It was really an interesting process to go through, I thought. And then, and yeah, as that progressed, I thought it was maybe much better to kind of, so you can see some of, I don't know if you can see, but on slide 14, you can see these kind of very traditional kind of pictorial drawings, products that they kind of make to sell, these pictures of elephants. And I really wanted to work with them to push their work into something a lot more contemporary and maybe a bit more relevant for today. So we started this idea of, I started sort of sending them research. So we have, you know, like on slide 15, I don't know if you can see it as well, but kind of ceramics by like Hollywood, and then getting these boutique artisans to like make responses to it. So I kind of really took a step back, relinquished my role as maybe like a fashion designer or a designer, but into something that's more of like a facilitator, and kind of looking at how these artisans could kind of almost give them a sense of design education into something that's a bit more contemporary. So I was sending them these pictures of ceramics. We've got paintings by Howard Hodgkin. Again, I don't know if you can see the slides or not, but I'm just going through these now. So kind of, again, just trying to really give them something, these kind of prompts, you know, this abstract painting or like modern sculpture, contemporary ceramics, to kind of really try and kind of redefine what boutique printing can be, and also to utilize their like amazing skills that they have, to kind of, you know, kind of really develop something like a new language around boutique printing. And again, you know, I think similar kind of projects will kind of exist around the world, but I think it was really important for me to kind of do something in Sri Lanka for my, you know, MA work, because, you know, obviously there's similar models, but it's really like important to me, and it's, you know, part of my heritage. And then you kind of see this final image here. So this is print that will be in the collection that I've kind of developed with them. So yeah, this is just one, but it's a kind of wider series, but hopefully you can check that out when the collection launches, or like at the MA showcase at the end of March. But thank you. Sorry about all the technical difficulties.
Thank you, Ranura. It was really great, very fascinating. We actually managed to see all the presentations, so no issues.
That's great. I can't see. I could only see. I couldn't really see what slide I was on. Or kind of
Yeah, no, I'm sorry for you. It must have been more difficult for you, possibly. We will go back. Really fascinating to see also how much the impact that your experience as Spoleto continues to have in your new projects, in your practice. And we will go back to this. Now I would hand it over to Cecilia.
Yes, hi, hello everyone. So I'm very glad to be here and to be part of this Art for the Environment Residency conversation. So first of all, I would like to thank Lucy, Camilla, Abigail, and the whole team for having organized this great opportunity for UAL students and alumni. In my experience, this residency has been a valuable opportunity to deepen my work, and also an opportunity to develop not only a network, but also an incredible space of dialogue and learning. So thank you very much. Here in the picture, you can see the results of my time spent at Mahler and LeWitt studios in Spoleto. And to let you understand a bit more about the process that led me here, I would like to say something about what happened before. So let's go to 2019. Sorry, here we go. So this, in 2019, I graduated at Chelsea College of Arts, focusing my research on weaving, digital embroidery, and natural dyeing. I have always been interested in textiles and in their possibility of being at the same time sculptures and paintings, but I've been more interested in their symbolic value. We used to consider textiles as surfaces of protection that separate our skin from the outside. Rather than considering them as thresholds of separation, I started looking at them as areas of relation. I feel that is really relevant during this time of crisis, reflecting upon the idea of relation, this idea of perceiving ourselves as a part of a woven structure where everything is interconnected. I felt fractures and empty spaces of separation, and I started imagining that something should start tickling the soles of our feet to wake up our minds and trigger processes of repairing. The rugs and textile pieces which I make explore the ancient tradition of tapestry weaving, considering it as a slow technology that permits different and more profound relationship to emerge between humans and natural resources. In this sense, I understand my textiles as being portals of connection between humans and the natural world. Following these thoughts, I started questioning on how can we change our current relation with materials, resources, and modes of production? And what is the role of art in this process of changing? So after my MA, I came back to Italy and I kept working along the lines of this research question, focusing on weaving and natural dyeing as examples of practices of repairing. The project I developed for the Mahler and LeWitt studios began with a virtual exploration of the territory around Spoleto. I was looking for artisans who have developed expertise in sustainable textile making and natural dyeing. One of these incredible people is Alessandro Butta, and he's a professor at the Academy of Fine Arts in Rome. He's an expert of dyeing and one of the few contemporary cultivators of woad in Italy. Woad, as you may know, is an ancient imperial plant which was cultivated and used to dye blues before indigo began to be imported from India. Due to the difficulty of the process of extraction, woad has been gradually replaced with indigo first, and then with synthetic dyes. What intrigued me is that Alessandro is still harvesting it in 2020, and he's basing his research on this amazing plant and on the color that derives from it, so on blue. So during my visiting, he shared with me his expertise on natural dyeing techniques. I really had hoped to see a wood dyeing demonstration, but unfortunately the harvest that year was scarce due to climate conditions that destroyed part of the cultivation. So we couldn't dye with it, but we dyed with indigo instead. That has kind of the same process. And what I found, what I learned from this experience is that if you work with natural resources, you have to be ready to alter the path of your project. So you have to be ready to give up sometimes. So together, as you can see here in the picture, we developed also gouache out of a mixture of natural extracts, chalk, honey, and water. Here you can see the studio. My studio practice moved in tandem with my making, involving drawing, writing, and weaving. I was deeply inspired by LeWitt's wall painting, and I started transferring my drawings onto the walls, as you can see in the picture on the right. And I crafted new kinds of portals that had similar feature to the tapestries I make. For the final open studio, here we go, okay. For the final open studio exhibition, I worked with the studio curators on the installation of new and recent work to create a space for imaginative reflection. So Mountains Are Lost Oceans, as you can see on the right, is not only the title of this portal, but also the title of the whole installation. And it is inspired by a reflection on the transformation of the Earth's matter and on the continuity that exists between human and non-human forces. The rugs and tapestries which I make usually hold archetypical symbols like the cross, the fire, or fading lines, and they try to speak without words through matter, color, images. And this is called Brindiamo alle future ceneri, and it holds the fire that is together a symbol of energy, power, action, and destruction. In alchemy, the fire generates a reaction that brings to the transformation of the matter. I usually like to say that my pieces are flying carpets because these rugs, they are not only objects, but they are metaphorical pieces. They are like sort of open doors towards the future. Here you can see on the left, it's another portal, and it's a window or an edicola, and it has an ancient wood recipe. And on the right, there is, let's say, raw matter. There is some wool that Alessandro gifted to me in one of our meetings, and is dyed with wood. So this material stands here as a reminder of generosity and kindness with the other. This is another portal, and the sentence is "La differenza fra provvisorio e permanente non è chiara," that in English is "the difference between the ephemeral and the permanent is not clear," and is a quote from LeWitt's interview, where he was asked about the impermanent nature of his wall paintings. He answered in this way, and I found it really interesting because, in my opinion, was more an ontological answer, and it was referred somehow to transformation and change. So I decided to use it. And so here you can see other pieces, and I really enjoyed the dialogue that I have with curators and artists, and this allowed me to install all these different pieces together, connecting them with a single thread that is also a structure behind the installation, the whole installation. I would like to finish with a quote from the report that I wrote. This is the last piece. This is the only piece that I made together with the writings, and is it called "I See You Shimmering." Anyway, I would like to read this part of the report. Approaching from a practical perspective, how things are made and what resources are employed to produce objects we use and consume allows us to develop another form of care for the environment and its inhabitants. As the authors of Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet propose, perhaps what we need is to relearn multiple forms of curiosity and to think of curiosity as an attunement to multi-species entanglement, complexity, and the shimmer all around us. In this sense, I think that art and the imagination are political tools that allow everything to shimmer, lighting up new forms of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia. Really wonderful journey through your poetic work. We don't have much time left, so I would open up to the attendees for any comment, questions. You can use, as we said, you can use the chat box on the bottom right, or you can raise your hand and ask your question in person if you prefer. To Ranura and Cecilia, in fact. Because in Cecilia, you were born in Italy, if I'm not wrong, in a region not far from Umbria, so you were quite familiar with the environment of the Spoleto residencies. Ranura, you were born in Sri Lanka and brought up in the UK. So I was wondering how much your cultural baggage you take with you when you go to a place influence and impact the way you experience that place and the resulting work that you produce.
I'm going to say, like, yeah, I think I've been very lucky in a way to have this very this duality in my life. I was younger, of seeing everything in the UK, but then also going back over to where I was born. So I think it's it puts me in I think quite a unique position to be able to, like, be very informed by what's going on over here, but then be able to take something back to Sri Lanka and try and contribute in a way that's maybe more beneficial over there. And I think that's really what I want to do with my practice as well, is kind of, again, like this idea of, I kind of touched on it earlier, but, looking at how someone, if you are a weaver over here or in Italy, but then over there, it's two kind of very different, it's seen as two very different professions, and kind of, I think that's, something that really needs to change in a way. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I'd kind of answer that question.
And in my opinion, I think that, my origins are really relevant, and as you have noticed from my presentation, I am very linked with the territory as well. And when I move around, I always take care of the territory and try to research about it and what are the important things of that specific place. So I think that somehow, for example, when I was in London, I think I stay in London for just 1 year, so it's not enough to understand everything of that territory and that city. But I felt that I was missing so much my territory and my origins, and I tried to link somehow with it. So yes, they are really relevant, and I think that that my territory is a sort of lens for as a lens of exploration.
Thank you. We have two questions from Lucy, one for Guy asking if the residencies are open now, and one for Cecilia asking about what you're working on at the moment. Guy, do you want to go first?
We're working towards the spring session now, which should begin on March 28th. We are hoping things will be opened up enough by then to go ahead. We are lucky in that we can create COVID secure environments and have live work studio spaces so artists can quarantine if necessary. So that's what we're working towards at the moment, and then a summer session in June, July. I'd encourage people to go to our website. On the homepage you can sign up to our mailing list, and we've actually got a couple more open calls being announced in the next couple of weeks. We've got a particular emphasis on performance art and live artists working in live arts who have obviously been so dramatically affected by the pandemic. So keep a lookout for those and do sign up to the mailing list.
Thank you, and we shared the website in the chat. Cecilia, what are you working on now?
Yes, so basically I am working on a new project that is I'm going to develop it during another residency that it will happen in June. That is in collaboration with the Orto Botanico of Pavia and with the University of Earth Science. So, and I have a project about the, let's say, birds' voices. So I won't say anything more, but it's about this, and still related with the relationship that we have with other living beings. And at the moment, I am also working as a support teacher in the middle school. So it's quite time consuming and mind consuming as well. So I'm trying to work on these two paths, even if sometimes, unfortunately, creativity has to be put on a side just because, I mean, I'm trying to use my creativity also as a teacher, but is a different work. But it's very nice to do that.
There's a question from Megnav to Ranura asking, is not from Italy, so how did you realize and come to know about the residency, and what made you choose them? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how did you know this was the right step after your master? That I leave it to you.
Yeah, so yeah, I think the AER program is very well kind of established through UAL. So I knew about the residency, the AER program first, and before I knew about the Mahler LeWitt studio. So yeah, I just kind of applied for the open call through AER, and I think for me it was kind of really nice because it was a very kind of immediate link to the region, and kind of, as I said, the knitwear production, and which is something I'm very interested in, the links to the Italian fashion industry, and also the work of LeWitt as well. That's kind of amazing. So I think it was a very almost quite natural choice for me, because as I don't know if you're familiar with the program, but there's lots of residencies across the world. So I think being in Spoleto, and in Italy was just really just the right fit for me. And I guess the second part of your question, how did you know this was? So I did this just before starting my master's, and I think that was really nice. So it was just like, and then I think that led my work to kind of, if I hadn't done the residency, I think I'd be in perhaps a different kind of mindset or kind of a way of thinking. So I think it was really beneficial to do it just before.
So a question from Valentina. Spoleto seems like a very inspiring place to work. I'd be interested in hearing from any of you. How do you keep motivated during challenging times such as this pandemic?
I mean, I think that Spoleto, it was, I mean, I went there during August. So let's say here in Italy, the situation was a bit calmer. So we could do many things, even if the situation was still a bit crazy around. Anyway, I think that Spoleto was the right space to try to be concentrated and to like try to find yourself again somewhere, and for me it was a great opportunity to also stay with nature and stay with the sound of birds and the silence of the forest. So I think yeah, it was an amazing time, and it was very challenging, but I think it was the best place to be.
One thing that's helped me keep motivated is reminding myself, and I should be a bit careful who's listening, but is reminding myself to stop working. You can so easily get sucked into, obviously, much of our work at the moment, and mine with the Spoleto project is seasonal, the Mahler and LeWitt Studios program. So just reminding yourself to log off, and you know, that's an element of the residency program we run in any case, but I think it's true for everyone in every walk of life. Just, yeah, not working as hard as you think maybe you even should be working, obviously, because, you know, creative things can happen in that time you're not working as well. So I've been walking a lot, for example, and that's helped me.
I just want to add, I think it's really helped like prioritize like what I actually really want to do in a way. And I think, you know, like when you're not commuting somewhere, not traveling, you know, you kind of realize how much actual time you have, and then how you can actually kind of just do something that you've always wanted to do, or kind of really utilize the time to just kind of reflect as well. I think it's been really good.
Thank you. Very positive and inspiring for everyone. And we should log off now. We are finishing time. So I wanted to thank again Guy, Cecilia and Ranura for being with us today, for sharing your time and your experiences. I invite everyone to join us next week, next Wednesday, for the last appointment of this first series of conversations. The focus will be on Latvia de Brazil. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you next week.